The sun cracks the horizon, over the plains of Moab. It spills liquid gold across an endless canvas of sand and rock. The air is still cool, carrying the scent of dust and the faint memory of a desert night. In this vast, quiet world, a sprawling camp of tents awakens. Against this breathtaking sunrise, 5 figures emerge, and they are walking toward the place where heaven and earth were said to touch. This is the nation of Israel, poised on the very edge of their promised land after 40 years of wandering. Names are counted. Land will be allotted. But there's a problem. In a world defined by fathers and sons, one family line is about to disappear. A name, his name, hangs in the balance, and with it, 5 daughters' future. To understand the courage of these 5 women, you must first understand the world they lived in. It was a world built on order, tradition, and divine law, designed to hold a nation together in the harsh and unforgiving wilderness. At the heart of this order was the system of inheritance. It was simple, clear, and absolute. Land, property, the family name were passed down through the male line. A father's legacy was entrusted to his sons, who would carry it forward, ensuring the family's portion remained within the tribe. This was the bedrock of their economic and social structure, a system as solid and unyielding as the stone tablets on which the 10 Commandments were carved. This system was not born of malice. It was designed for stability. In an agrarian society, land was everything. It was wealth. Keeping land within a tribe and within a family clan prevented the fragmentation of the nation's strength. A woman, upon marriage, typically joined her husband's family and his clan. If she inherited land, that land would then pass from her birth tribe to her husband's tribe, upsetting a delicate balance that was crucial for the nation's cohesion. The law, therefore, was clear. Sons inherited. It was the way things had always been done. It was the established, accepted, and unquestioned custom of their people. But what happened when there were no sons? The law, in its straightforwardness, had a silence on this matter. A void. For the daughters of Zelophehad, this silence was not a comfort. It was a threat. Their father was a man of the tribe of Manasseh, a descendant of Joseph. He had been faithful. He had not been part of Korah's rebellion against Moses and God. He had simply died, as all mortals do, during the long years in the desert, and he had left behind no sons to carry his name or to claim his portion of the land that God had promised them. According to the rigid interpretation of the law, this meant his lineage would end. In the quiet of their tent, surrounded by the hum of the vast camp, the 5 sisters faced their crossroads. Grief for their father was still fresh, a heavy cloak upon their shoulders. But another, more urgent feeling was rising, a fierce, protective love for his memory, and a refusal to let his name disappear. They could have accepted their fate. It would have been the easier path. They could have remained silent, resigned themselves to the care of their extended family, and watched as the census was taken and the land was divided, leaving no portion for the house of Zelophehad. Silence was the expected response. It was the path of least resistance. But silence would have been a betrayal of their father and of themselves. They looked at each other, these 5 women, and saw a shared strength. Mahlah, the eldest, perhaps with a steadying resolve. Noah, with a clear-sighted view of the injustice. Hoglah, filled with a passionate fire. They understood that their personal grief was now a public matter. To protect their family's name, they had to step out of the private world of women and into the public arena of men, law, and power. It was a terrifying thought. Their decision was not made in an instant. It was likely forged over days and nights of conversation, of weighing the risks, of gathering their courage. They would have practiced their words, honing their argument until it was as sharp and clear as a polished stone. They were not planning a rebellion. They were planning a reasoned appeal. They would not shout or weep or demand. They would stand before the leaders of the entire nation and present their case with dignity and logic. They would use the law's own principles to argue for its expansion. They arrived at the entrance to the tent of meeting, the sacred heart of the Israelite camp. This was not just a courthouse. It was the place where the presence of God dwelled. Pillar of cloud by day, fire by night, here stood the highest authorities of the nation, Moses, Eleazar. The chieftains, The 5 sisters stopped before the council. The air itself seemed heavy with reverence and power. For a moment, the world must have held its breath. Mahlah likely stepped forward as their spokesperson. Her voice, though trembling at first, carried with clarity and conviction. They did not begin with accusations or demands. They began with respect. Then they laid out the facts with simple, devastating logic. They started by establishing their father's honor. "Our father died in the wilderness," they said. "He was not among Korah's followers. He was a good man, a faithful Israelite." Their plea was not for riches or for special treatment. It was for something far more fundamental: their father's name. Why should our father's name disappear from his clan because he had no son? The question hung in the air, simple and profound. It exposed the flaw in the law with surgical precision. The system meant to preserve fathers' names did the exact opposite in their case. It was an appeal to the spirit of the law, even as it challenged the letter. Finally, they stated their request. It was bold, unprecedented, and perfectly logical. "Give us property among our father's relatives." They were not asking for a handout. They sought their rightful inheritance, the land that would have gone to a son. They asked to be treated as heirs, to be given the means to carry their father's name into the promised land. They stood, 5 women before the most powerful men, having made their case. They had spoken truth to power. Now they could only wait for the scales of justice to tip. Notice the brilliance here. Moses listened. He heard not just their words. He heard the truth and the justice behind them. Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, Tirzah. He saw not troublemakers but petitioners with a legitimate grievance. He, the great lawgiver who had received the commandments on Sinai, had no immediate answer. Their request was without precedent. The existing laws, the scrolls he guarded, offered no clear solution. To grant it would alter a foundational tradition. To deny it would be a clear injustice. The weight of the decision was immense. He did not dismiss them. He did not consult the other chieftains. He did not debate it in a public forum. Instead, Moses did what he always did with matters touching the divine law. He turned to a higher authority. Moses brought their case before the Lord. Then, the silence was broken. The word of the Lord came to Moses. The divine verdict was not ambiguous, complex, or conditional. It was direct. It was decisive. It affirmed the plea of the 5 sisters completely. God's response was a vindication of their courage. "What Zelophehad's daughters are saying is right," the Lord declared. This single sentence changed everything. It was a divine endorsement, a confirmation their sense of justice matched God's. The highest authority had looked at their case and found it true. The verdict did not stop at validation. It established a new law for all Israel. You must certainly give them property as an inheritance among their father's relatives, and give their father's inheritance to them. The instruction was emphatic, not a suggestion, but a mandate. The inheritance that would have been lost was now secured. Their father's name would not be erased. They would have their portion in the promised land. A door sealed by tradition was thrown wide open. The ruling created a permanent statute for future generations. God instructed Moses, "If a man dies and has no son, give his inheritance to his daughter. If there was no daughter, give it to his brothers. If no brothers, to his father's brothers." And so on, a clear line of succession. For the first time, daughters were explicitly named as heirs. The 5 sisters had changed the law for their entire nation. Their quest for justice resulted in systemic reform benefiting countless women: Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, Tirzah. They had challenged heaven with a question, and heaven answered by rewriting the rules. The story does not end there. A legal victory is one thing. Its practical application is another. As Israel prepared to finally enter and divide the promised land, a new and related problem arose. The leaders of the tribe of Manasseh approached Moses. They were not challenging the new law. They fully accepted that the daughters should inherit. But they brought up a practical concern: the preservation of tribal land. What would happen if these 5 heiresses married men from other tribes? Their concern was logical. According to custom, a wife joined her husband's tribe. If Zelophehad's daughters married outside of Manasseh, their inherited land would be transferred to the tribe of their husbands. During the year of Jubilee, this transfer would become permanent. Over time, this could lead to the slow erosion of a tribe's ancestral allotment. The elders of Manasseh were trying to ensure the integrity of their tribe's inheritance, but the story doesn't end there. Once again, Moses consulted God for wisdom, and once again, the divine response provided a solution that was both just and practical. It honored the new right of daughters to inherit, while also upholding the importance of tribal land identity. The Lord's command was a compromise, a second ordinance that clarified the first. The daughters of Zelophehad were free to marry whomever they pleased, but with one condition: they must marry within their own father's tribal clan. They may marry anyone they please as long as they marry within a clan of their father's tribe. This addendum to the law was a brilliant stroke of legal and social wisdom. It allowed Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, Tirzah to have both their inheritance and the freedom to choose a husband. At the same time, it ensured that their father's land would remain within the tribe of Manasseh. The scriptures record that the 5 sisters followed this directive faithfully. They married their cousins, sons of their uncles, keeping their property and their father's name securely within their ancestral clan. The story of Zelophehad's daughters is more than just an ancient legal dispute. It is a timeless testament to the power of speaking up and the nature of true justice. It endures because it speaks to a fundamental human need: to be seen, to be counted, to have a place to call one's own. These 5 women were not trying to start a revolution. They were simply trying to preserve their family. Yet, in their quiet and dignified appeal, they set in motion a profound change that rippled through their society. Systems, even those believed divinely inspired, must also be just and compassionate in application. They are named Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, Tirzah, named not once, but 3 times. In a text where women are often unnamed, this repetition is significant. It ensures they are not forgotten. So why does this matter today? The dust has long settled over the plains of Moab. The tents are gone. The world has changed beyond recognition. Yet the echoes of those 5 voices still travel through time. They speak to us today in our own complex world of laws and systems. The story of Zelophehad's daughters is a powerful parallel for modern struggles for justice. Laws are written by people. Systems are built by societies. Sometimes they have gaps. Sometimes they have silences. Sometimes they have blind spots that create injustice for those who fall between the cracks. Their story is a blueprint for what to do in such a place. The first step toward change is the courage to question the status quo. The willingness to stand up and ask, why? Why should a rule meant to create order result in injustice for me or my family? Mahlah and her sisters refused to accept just the way things are. They believed the system could be better, more fair. This spirit fuels civil rights and social justice movements. The laws of humanity can and should bend toward a higher moral arc, greater compassion and fairness. A timeless lesson: they did not resort to violence or chaos. They used their voices, they used reason, they used deep understanding of the principles they appealed to. They made a legal argument before a legal body. This is the foundation of a just society. Any citizen can peacefully petition for redress. The story champions an orderly, reasoned appeal. You can challenge a system from within. Use its own language. Use its own ideals to call it to a higher standard. A testament to the power of words, the power of logic, the power of unwavering dignity. The final, enduring image: 5 figures walking in early morning light, ancient and modern at once. Every woman who has demanded equal pay. Every citizen who has fought discriminatory law. Every person who has spoken truth to power. Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, Tirzah. You do not need to be a king or a general to change the world. Sometimes all it takes is the courage of a few determined people, walking side by side, to challenge the heavens, and in doing so, to change the law for everyone. If this story moved you, subscribe and turn on notifications. Tell us, what modern injustice needs this kind of courage? Share this to spark a change. Walk toward the light. Make room for justice.